To another really crazy aspect of the climate debate, I'm joined on the desk by Sky News Digital Editor Jack Houghton. Thanks for joining us, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
You've been having a look at some of the IPCC scientific and policy documents, and incredibly, they've been focusing on gender issues. Apparently, gender has a strong relation to play, a strong role to play in tackling climate change. Please explain.
Apparently it does. So this is obviously in relation to the new report which has come out, which is in relation to climate change and land. So it's about different ways that you can mitigate the carbon and the damage, etc., that they're mentioning in the report. But it pivots. So you go from talking about a section talking about the permanence of carbon sequestration in soils and terrestrial biomass, and they're making these really interesting arguments about soil may hold the solution to beating climate change. Yeah. Then it pivots to gender theory.
And we just get back that graphic that we had up before. As you say, it talks about real scientific issues, science, carbon emissions, soil and the like, and then it pivots to this. Gender is a key axis of social inequality that intersects with other systems of power and marginalisation to cause unequal experiences of climate vulnerability and adaptive capacity. Please explain.
So the capacity in which this is mentioned in the report, it's making a case that gender equality can be one of these mechanisms for actually beating climate change, because people most impacted by climate change will be the poorest people, and women in some of these countries particularly poor. However, it actually shames Australia in two specific mentions in the report, saying that we have a, quote, masculinised agriculture system. And it makes the case that women are undervalued. And look, you can definitely make the case. It's an interesting case. There's an argument to it. It does mention the burden that some women in Australia's farming communities face in terms of unpaid domestic duties and everything. But we're talking about a scientific report where we know the ramifications of some of these policy decisions, including, $500 million to the Pacific Islands and everything. And the proportional argument for are there too many men in farms and what kind of patriarchal influence is in there? Is this really a place for gender theory to play a role in this discussion?
It is just bizarre. Let's go to a couple of the other quotes that you've lifted from the report for us, and we'll share them with viewers and have this conversation. Due to ingrained patriarchal social structures and gendered ideologies, women may face multiple barriers to participation in decision-making in land-based adaptation and mitigation actions in response to climate change. Now, that's the global perspective, as you were saying. In some poor countries, women could be marginalised. Here's where Australia gets a mention. In masculinised agricultural settings of Australia and Canada, for example, climate adaptation can increase women's work on and off farm, but without increasing recognition for women's undervalued contributions. I mean, what are they playing at here? What's this got to do with saving the planet?
There's a rather candid assertion in there that women's contribution to farming is undervalued. And again, that's something for discussion. I don't know if it has the place in an official, formal, global IPCC report, which is forming the foundation of some of our policy decisions. I'm finding it increasingly more difficult to separate ideology in these reports from the actual science. And I'm genuinely interested in it. And I think people like yourself are as well. I know you read these reports.
Yeah.
And the science, like talking about, the permanence of carbon sequestration in soil and everything, that was an element of the conversation that I had never heard, and I actually found the science behind that quite fascinating. And there's
sequestration of carbon dioxide in soil.
A couple of pages later, we're talking about radical gender theory, and I don't see. And also, I mean, it's worth pointing out that there are 72,000 women employed in Australia's agricultural sector, and they actually make up 32% of the total population. And it's this bizarre push for getting everyone to 50% in all these various, but only the industries that they specifically want to hit 50%. And then the idea that the patriarchy is somewhat inhibiting that push. Whatever happened to freedom of choice? Because these farmers, they're finding it very difficult for anybody of any gender to come out. I just find it strange that we're shamed on the global stage for having a, quote, masculinised agricultural...
Well, and as you say, it's inaccurate. There'll be plenty of people watching this through women in the regions who know full well that women are an equal partner in agricultural industries right across this country. Whether that's recognised by the UN or others, I don't know, but it certainly is the reality. Great stuff, Jack. And now you've put a piece together on this. It's going to go out on a new format starting tomorrow that you're putting together called Viewpoint, where you're going to pull together a lot of the opinion and analysis from Sky?
Yeah, so every week we're going to have a newsletter that can funnel people to this kind of content, these kind of stories from some of our distinguished hosts who will hopefully be contributing. And every Wednesday, this newsletter will go out. People can subscribe for free.
Starting today. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent, Jack. Keep an eye out for that Viewpoint new newsletter. Some of the strongest opinions and analysis from this great station. Thanks for joining us, Jack.